I'd been dead asleep when I'd gotten the call. In fact, it wasn't until the third time my phone rang that I'd finally pulled myself from the grave my sleeping subconscious went. Groggily, I reached towards my nightstand. It was my friend Maxine on the line, and she was hysterical. "He's gone," she cried, her words almost incoherent through the sobbing. Adrenaline was pumping now, banishing any remaining cobwebs, and my room was thrown into sterile relief as I flicked on the overhead light. Heart pounding, I pulled on a pair of jeans and an old Harvard sweatshirt. It was old and gross, with a frayed collar and threadbare cuffs. "It's Jake," Maxine said as I rushed over. I hadn't gotten to her house until about 3 a.m. Red and blue lights were flickering outside like ghosts. The cops had been there for an hour, and judging from the grim faces, they had no idea of what was going on. Jake had gone missing. The pit in my stomach suspected what I thought was happening, but the look on Maxine's face confirmed it for me. Her twin brother had gone to the river. In our small Missouri town, there is an enormous river that runs smack dab through the center of it. It was windy and smaller in some parts, with weeds that threatened to clog it entirely. One spot at the very edge of town was infamous for how many bodies used to be dumped there during the heyday of the mafia. Nothing's turned up for a few years, but still. We'd all grown up with the stories about that spot. It was an unusually deep part of the river, with an unusually fast current. It flooded easy, with the nearby swampland sucking in all sorts of debris into its bottomless abyss. All in all, a good place to go missing. The dead spot. My stomach twisted at the thought of Jake heading there alone. Maxine and I didn't say a word, but we both knew that's where he was headed. Bloody moon, bloody moon, bloody moon. There was also a myth about this place. While some of us grew up with Bloody Mary, we had Bloody Moon. Huddled in the decrepit bathrooms of our elementary school, we used to chant these haunted words, giggling while staring into the cracked girls' bathroom mirror. Those words did nothing there, but chant them 3 times under the light of a full moon while staring into the rushing waters of the dead spot, and, well, your wish will be granted. Jake, like the rest of us, had always laughed at this, said it was stupid, a ghost story for children. Until 2 days ago, when Jake's girlfriend passed away in a fatal car accident. Where do you think he is?" Maxine asked nervously. The forest rustled quietly as if in response. The drive here had been quiet and short. "I don't know," I said, just as quiet. There was something about the silence of the forest that put my nerves on end. Not the silence of a quiet street with the absence of cars, but rather, it was the quiet of a graveyard, where sounds are swallowed by the recently tilled dirt of freshly dug graves. "Should we split up?" Maxine asked. I looked over at her, about to call her 10 kinds of crazy. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the look in her eyes, glittering, unfocused, and familiar. The same thing I'd seen in Jake's eyes when the surgeons told him his girlfriend hadn't survived. I felt my blood go still. "Sure," I said evenly. "I'll start downriver." I had only been here once before, dragged here on a dare with a boy who hadn't been worth it in the long run. He taunted me, laughed at my fear, saying it was unwarranted. I was known for being kind of a scaredy cat, but he had taken it upon himself to show me I was wrong. By the light of the full moon, he'd gotten as far as 2 bloody moons before I started hysterically crying and begging to go home. That was almost 4 years ago. and I still think about it to this day. The spot was exactly how I remembered it. The clouds broke as I walked up to the river's edge, unleashing the sterile white light of the full moon above. How the water danced, like a ribbon of living light. Whitecaps broke the surface, tossing handfuls of glittering jewels across the riverbed. The roar was deafening, washing out even the cries of Maxine for her brother. How could I be afraid of something so beautiful? I thought to myself, the light flickering in my eyes. It'd be so easy to say it, to finally put an end to all those rumors. And before I could stop myself, the words dropped like stones from my lips. Bloody moon. Nothing. I paused. Bloody moon. Still nothing. Feeling a rush from the inevitable victory, I looked down and cleared my throat. But the words died in my throat. I suddenly couldn't breathe. There'd been clouds covering the moon when I first walked up. It'd been so dark, I hadn't seen it. I hadn't realized what I was standing next to. But now, in the spotlight of the full moon, I'd recognize that jacket anywhere. My throat closed even tighter. That was Jake's jacket, next to the river. And just beyond that, in the water itself, I looked down to find Jake looking up at me from just below the surface of the water. My entire body froze. The whites of his eyes were horribly yellowed, and they caught mine, unblinking as I stood paralyzed on the shore. I couldn't breathe. All I could see was his face, slightly upturned towards mine. His wide eyes, his bloated skin rippling his lips. They were moving. He was saying something. His skin was swollen and white, thickly ballooning over his neck. Uncomprehendingly, I watched as the water rushed over him, but the churning tide from the recent rains didn't seem to bother him. "Run!" a tiny voice deep in my brain screamed, banging against the prison of my frozen body. But I couldn't move. And then suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him start to reach for my foot. Adrenaline spiked through me, finally freeing me from this paralyzing fear, and in a panic, I turned to run. My foot kicked outwards, accidentally throwing his jacket into the rushing river. It was visible for a second, the bright red against the flickering white light. But then it was gone. I don't know what he wished for, but I wanted no part of it. Thank you so much for listening to this narration. I hope you enjoyed. A quick thank you to my patrons, Rinku Starr, William Hartley, Cupcake Hips, Alonzo, IC Narrates, and Jesse Hartley. Again, thank you all so much for your support. If you've got any prayer requests, feel free to reach out to me on any social media, and I would love to know how I can be praying for you. And also, about each month, I link a different cause in the description to donate money to, people going through some tough surgeries or funds for victims of natural disasters, etc., etc. If you've got a little extra money to give to someone in need, I've got at least one link for you each month in the description. So that's there for you to do that if you feel that you can. Even if it means that you unsubscribe from my Patreon, that's absolutely wonderful. Much love, and thank you guys again for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.